Good afternoon, everybody. Chef Rich, Chef Carla, and I welcome you to week 9 in CU 122. Great job in week 8, everybody. We saw some awesome pies come flying in, and the on-time submissions I thought was pretty good. So thanks for hanging in there, and thanks for staying tough. We may need to make sure that we keep going for the last 3 weeks of this course. We've got 9, 10, 11, 12, so we have 4 weeks left. We need to make sure we stay strong. This is where a lot of learning takes place for the next couple of weeks, especially here in the bread. This part of the course I know can be a little bit frustrating. We oftentimes hear, I'm not a baker, but guess what? Once you get into industry, this is the stuff that carries you further and sets you ahead of the competition. So definitely take advantage of this. This is a really good area to learn. Chef Rich, what'd you come up with for week 8?
I'll see. I'm going to share my screen with you guys here real quick, and hopefully I don't just botch everything up. But let's see here. Let's see. So I was just pulled up a couple of like some of the let me see if I can move you guys down here. So just, a couple of the pies that came through, they look pretty good. People are, like you said, people are like, oh, I'm not into baking. But people have actually gotten pretty like really creative and have gone above and beyond some of the just putting your pie dough on top and whatnot. So let me see, how do I unshare my screen here?
You're good.
Unshare? What's that?
You're trying to unshare. There you go.
Yeah. Are we good?
Yeah, you're good.
So I don't know. Oh, there we go. Okay, so. But yeah, it seems like, a lot of people are, saying, oh, I'm not into baking or I've never done it much before, but, the creativity, it's kind of fun. I think people are actually enjoying it a lot more than they thought they would. And then, just reiterating, this baking is what we're going at is like, making the breads and stuff like that. Some of these things are just so critical to learn. And even if you're not a baker, they're just such good things to kind of have in your repertoire and stuff like that. So I've been actually enjoying seeing all these different pies, and people are putting their own twist on it and enjoying it, I think, a lot more than they thought they would. But also just to reiterate, with week 8, with everything being due, by Wednesday or, Tuesday night at midnight, that this week usually everything has to be graded by Friday. But since we're on break, if people are submitting late into Wednesday or even like the Thursday and Friday, if you're getting stuff in, just be aware that we're really not working past those days. So instead of me having everything graded by Friday at 11, they've pushed that back to Monday. So if you wait till closer to the end of the due date, you might receive your grade a little bit later this week just because of the break. So just to let you know, don't worry, you're still going to get your grade, but just with this holiday weekend, it might be a little thrown off, but it'll all get taken care of.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Chef Rich. We really appreciate that. So as a reminder, as Chef Rich was saying, if your assignment has been submitted by Wednesday and you do not receive a grade, fear not, everything's fine. Chef Rich is probably with his family enjoying a nice Thanksgiving meal. You will have your grade no later than Monday, by 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. So once again, if you submit your assignment, you do not receive your grade by Wednesday, don't worry, the school's closed down. You'll receive your grade no later than Monday by 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. As well, we have decided to extend the late submission period. We are going to keep that open until Friday, November the 29th, until 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Chef Carla, how are you?
I'm good, Chef. Yeah. There was a lot of pickling and sausage talking in my previous class, so running a little late here.
Oh, well, welcome, welcome. What do you have any feedback regarding week 8?
No, I mean, it's, I know I mentioned that the late period is going to be extended for 1 day, but that is it. No extra concerns,
Awesome. Love to hear that. Love to hear that. Well, ladies and gents, once again, great job on week 8. It's a lot of fun, especially for Chef Carla, Chef Rich, and I at this stage in the game. as we go into week 9. It's exciting to see everybody's growth. And we've also noticed that confidence is building with the baking, which is absolutely fantastic. So great job. Once again, like Chef Rich was talking about, when you get into industry, we understand that your intentions may not be to become a pastry chef. However, you are going to be utilizing the skills that you do pick up in this pastry and baking section here in CU 122. I guarantee you, you're going to find yourself in a bake shop. You will be making breads. You will be making something at one point in time or another. So definitely keep this knowledge in the back of your pocket. It's going to pay dividends. Ladies and gents, let's take a quick look at our class page for this week. This information is posted on both of our class pages. Especially what we just talked about. Thanksgiving holiday, all assignments that do not receive a grade by Wednesday will be graded by Monday by 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're accepting late submissions only this week. We're extending the period until Friday, November the 29th at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's to accommodate for the Thanksgiving week. Ladies and gents, is everybody seeing the weekly intro videos? Is everybody watching those? Anyone? Yeah? All right, make sure you tune into those on a weekly basis. They're posted at the top of our class pages. And this gives you a little heads up about what's going on for this coming week. A little bit of additional information to set you ahead of the rest of the competition. All right, ladies and gents, let's dive into week 9 here in CU 122. This week, we are working with straight dough, the straight dough method. We're going to be making French baguettes, which is pretty cool. So we have 2 knowledge checks this week. Make sure that you take both of those knowledge checks, and don't forget that you can take those knowledge checks as many times as you like, and only the highest score will stick. So Chef Carla or myself reach out to you and we say, hey, how you doing? Do you mind posting attendance? You can go ahead and hit that knowledge check one more time. It'll keep you close to the fire, keep you nice and warm, and you'll post attendance again. And then thank you very much, everybody, for being here for our live session. I know it's a little bit early this week, but we did want to make accommodations so everybody could be with their families. And then, like I said, this week we are making French baguettes. Hey, here's a great suggestion to be thinking about for this week. Attend or watch the live session on Monday. Read and understand the knowledge checks. I would jump ahead of the game and get that done Wednesday morning if at all possible. And then read and understand and create a prep list. Got a lot of extra time this week. I think a lot of people are going to be off work. Go ahead and work ahead of the game with this coming exercise, this coming assignment. Don't wait till Tuesday night to do it because it's going to take you a couple hours. And so you'll find yourself in a very difficult predicament if that's the case. Prepare the assignment. Do that on Thursday or Friday, right? Or hey, better yet, make French baguettes for Thanksgiving Day. You'll be a hero, right? And then after you submit it, sit back and wait for Chef Rich, his commentary, and then resubmit as suggested. Benjamin, what's up?
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know what I did wrong, but I was doing my pie, okay? I got the pie crust perfect, but when I did the top, it collapsed.
What type of berries were you using?
I did the apple.
You did the apple. If it collapsed, most likely you did not have enough filling in there, or the filling was, there were too many gaps of space in there. And so as the apple pie cooks, the fibers break down and the actual pie itself will lower itself. Okay. So you want to make sure that those apples are in there. You don't want to be pressing them in there, but you want to shake that pan just a little bit to make sure that you get any air gaps out of there. And that would be my guess. Chef Carly, do you have another guess as to what happened?
Yeah, possibly the openings might have been a little smaller too, the ventilation. Okay. So it kind of rises at the beginning because it's trapping, there's a lot of steam. And eventually if you take it out of the oven, there's no more heat. So the pressure is going to collapse. So, but it is sort of like one of those natural things that happens to pies, But maybe opening the hole just a little bit larger so the steam can get out without expanding the dough. So you don't see a huge collapse at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good theory as well. So remember the ventilation gaps, and then also to shake that pie a little bit to make sure you get any air pockets out of there. and
Okay.
you will be in good shape next time.
All
Does
right,
that
thank
answer
you.
your question, Benjamin?
Yeah, I'm gonna redo it for you guys. So
Cool. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate
Yep.
it. Stefan, what's your question?
Yeah, I was wondering, is there any way to open up those knowledge checks earlier than Wednesday?
Who is your instructor?
Carla?
So go ahead and reach out to Chef Carla, and I'm sure she can work with you.
Okay, thank you, Chef.
You're welcome. All right, ladies and gents, moving back to our week 9 weekly conversions chart right here for you. Take advantage of this information. We got into a big conversation this past weekend at the property that I'm associated with, and the bakery staff was trying to scale recipes. And you know what? I was thinking about these knowledge checks, and our bakery staff was trying to quarter a recipe, and they're trying to quarter tablespoons and teaspoons. And I'm thinking, you should have gone to a Escoffier to learn those knowledge checks. You would be fine right now. So this information is definitely utilized quite a bit. Hey, week 9 here in CU 122, everybody. Like I mentioned, we are working with the straight dough method. When I think about straight dough method, I just think everything into the bowl and mix. And that is the long and the short of the story. But we're going to be making French baguettes this week to take a look at a couple of different shapes of bread that are common varieties out there. It runs the gamut, and this is just a touch, the tip of the iceberg. We have baguettes, right, that we're going to be working with this week. It's probably one of the most simple, complicated breads that you could ever make, and I think this class is going to rock the house on it. Other common shapes, Pullman loaf, right, that we use quite a bit here in America, and that is our sandwich bread. Vienna rolls, which are fairly popular. The Latin community makes a bread called bolillos, which is very similar in shape to that. And then we have the challah bread, which is one of my most favorite breads. I love to make French toast. You like French toast out of that stuff, Rich? Chef Rich?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, challah bread, that's the best. I love that one. And then grissini, which is kind of a long, thin, a little bit more of a hard type breadstick. You see those served with soups and salads. They used to be served a lot in the 70s and at restaurants. Epi bread down here, which had a brief period of popularity a couple of years ago. A lot of the chefs were doing epi breads because they look so cool. So those are some of the more common shapes that you're going to see out and about as you're strolling around. And then, ladies and gents, the definition of a baguette is it's a long, thin bread that is commonly made from a basic lean or a straight dough. There's no fat added to the dough, and that's why they call it a lean dough. And it is also traditionally crisp. It's cooked at a very high temperature. We're going to be cooking at 450 degrees this week for the recipe, so it does get fairly hot. And they're anywhere from about 2 inches in diameter to 25 inches in length. Some baguettes get a little bit crazy. They do get up to about 3 feet long. France takes their baguettes extremely seriously. They have a national competition each year to decide who is the baguette king of France. And so it is a very, very serious subject over there. I think France produces, I think it's 2 baguettes per person every 3 months or something like that. It's an amazing amount of baguettes that they produce. So that is a French baguette. Ladies and gents, Chef Carla and I have been talking to you about different types of flours over the past couple of weeks. Let's take a look at what makes that flour, which is a kernel of wheat, just to get a better understanding of the flour. The bran is the outer coating of the wheat kernel, and it's extremely rich in fiber. It's very good for us, especially for our gut health, because it is considered to be what is called a prebiotic. A prebiotic helps to introduce the biomes and the microbiomes into the gut health. And it also has a fairly high level of B vitamins in there. So it's a great source of fiber and vitamins and minerals. In the very center of the wheat kernel is what is called the endosperm. And that is where a lot of the carbohydrates, the complex sugars, come from that are found in flour. And then down in the very, very center of the wheat kernel is the wheat germ, which is very high in antioxidants, vitamin E, and healthy fats. Healthy fats being defined as low density lipoproteins, primarily unsaturated fats that don't leave any type of deposits in your arteries. So they're very, very good for you. And then it also contains the antioxidants, which help fight the free radicals in our blood system and can lead to the prevention of cancer. So the three primary parts of the kernel of wheat is bran, endosperm, and germ. And then what we primarily work with is the endosperm, and that's what has the protein and the different levels of protein in there that helps to create the gluten. All right, ladies and gents, so moving on, we have talked to you a little bit about gluten over the past couple of weeks. Here is just a slightly different perspective of it. And you know, we do talk quite a bit about this in this course, but it is something that we need to learn how to manipulate and manage, especially when it comes to making pies, biscuits, cookies, and breads. So there are multiple different levels, very, very important. Does anybody have any questions so far? Anybody? All right, ladies and gents, the world of yeast, right? Yeast is an incredible fungus. There's about 1,500 different species of yeast out there. So it is not just a very narrow field. And the primary purpose of yeast, once it gets mixed in with the dough, it consumes the carbohydrates that are in the flour. And once it is mixed with a little bit of water, it begins to give off carbon dioxide and alcohol, which forces the bread to rise. So that is the primary function of yeast. It is a traditional leavening agent that we work with in the industry, primarily used for bread. Now, the two most common types of yeast that we work with, the first is active dry yeast. And that's what looks like little tiny granules, very small little BBs almost, is how to describe them. And it will last virtually forever in your freezer. It is an indestructible alive fungus. So I don't know how that works, but it does stay alive. And then the other common type of yeast is instant yeast. It's also known as rapid rise or even quick rise. The major difference between the two, instant yeast and active dry yeast, active dry yeast or instant yeast does not need to be brought alive with water. It's not required. So active yeast does require water. Instant yeast does not require water. And so those are the two primary differences between those two. Most likely in industry, you're going to be working quite a bit with active dry yeast. It's the most common. It's sold in 1 pound packages. Red Star is one of the biggest labels that is out there. So ladies and gents, in your weekly presentation and underneath your research materials this week is a great video by Chef Tom. He works in our pastry department. We're not going to go through that video, but this is a great video to refer back to when it comes to techniques on how to prepare this bread. Let's take a look at this week's recipe real quick. There's only 4 ingredients required to prepare French bread. It's an extremely simplistic dough. If you follow the directions as prescribed to make the French baguettes, it's going to be a super simple project for you. You need to make sure that you allow yourself plenty of time this week to do this. Do not wait till next Tuesday night to start this assignment. Otherwise, you will be sunk in the water. You're probably looking at anywhere between 4 to 5 hours to prepare this assignment at a minimum. And a lot of that is allowing the bread to proof and rise. What's going to happen if you try to rush this assignment, it's going to be a thick, dense, weapon-like baguette that you're going to have. And you could probably use it to defend yourself if need be, but you really want to try to avoid that. So the primary ingredients are going to be bread flour, water, kosher salt, and instant yeast. And make sure that you follow those items directly. Do not use cake flour. It does not have the protein level. Pastry flour doesn't. AP flour is going to be very difficult to develop enough gluten with, and you're not going to get that nice crisp pull that you have with a traditional French baguette. So step one, ladies and gents, is you're going to combine all ingredients in the bowl, and you're going to combine them. After you take your bowl, you put your flour, your yeast, your salt, and your dry ingredients into the bowl. You want to mix them up just a little bit, and then you're going to add your water, and then you're going to mix it just a little bit until that dough's kind of shaggy, but it's all come together. So that's step one. It's very, very simplistic. Brenda, did you have a question?
Yeah, I actually did. I'd already bought my yeast for the bread.
Uh-huh.
I'm hoping it's the right kind.
Okay.
You said we had to use instant yeast.
That's what the recipe is calling for, but the active dry yeast is going to work as well because there is water in this recipe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember what kind it was that I got. I just happened to get some, but I don't remember what it is.
My suggestion, Chef Carla?
Yeah, Chef, she can use active dry, but it's not the same amount. There's 3 kinds of yeast that are commercially sold. There's one that's called fresh, which is kind of cake-like, it's kind of like Play-Doh sort of. Then you have active dry, then you have instant. Now, from all those 3 yeast that I just mentioned, the instant is actually sort of like the strongest of all 3. So for this recipe, we require 10 grams of instant yeast. Let's say, for example, you guys, if you ended up buying the wrong yeast, you have active dry. I'm going to mute you for a second, Brenda. But let's say, for example, you have active dry and you made the mistake. That's okay. Don't stress out, you guys. What you do is the conversion is really simple. You take the 10 grams that you need for instant and you times 1.5. So 10 times 1.5, it gives you 15 grams of active dry. 10 grams of instant, 15 of active dry. That's all you need to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the chat right now. But they're a little different in strength, so want to make sure that, let's say, for example, you make the mistake and you have active dry and you still put 10 grams, it's going to take forever for your dough to rise. It's going to last for a while, like on your kitchen counter. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat really quickly, Chef.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Chef Carla has provided some fantastic advice. When you're working with yeast does best between the temperatures of 90 and 100 degrees. So that's when yeast really gets active and starts to give off that carbon dioxide and that alcohol. So make sure that when you add that water, you don't want to add really smoking hot water to that dough, because otherwise you're going to kick that yeast in and it's going to give off all this carbon dioxide and alcohol, and you might end up killing the yeast. The yeast dies right around 110 degrees. So you want to make sure that that's room temperature water. So make sure that you focus on that. Now, once you have your dough mixed and it's kind of in that shaggy state, you can then take it out of the bowl, put it onto your counter. And you're going to bring your ingredients together. You can lightly dust your countertop, and then work the dough just a little tiny bit to make sure that it's all together as one. And then you're going to shape it into a rectangle, just like we have pictured right up here. And then you're going to fold one side in and then fold the other side in. And then you're going to stretch it out again into a rectangle and then fold one side in and then the other side in. And then you'll shape it up into a bowl. And then you're going to put that back in, or shape that up into a ball, and then you're going to put that back into the bowl and let it rest for about 30 minutes. And you will repeat that at least 2 more times over the next couple of hours. So do not rush the process. It doesn't work out very well. The yeast needs to ferment. It needs to come alive, and it needs to work its way through the dough. It's very, very important part of not only the flavor, but of the leavening process as well. So ingredients in the bowl, mix it just till it comes together. It's still going to look shaggy. That's fine. It's not going to be smooth in the bowl. You're going to flip it out onto your floured work surface. You're going to bring it together, stretch it into a rectangle. 1/3 in, 1/3 in. Stretch it into a rectangle, 1/3 in, 1/3 in, and you're set. Shape it into a ball, put it back into the bowl, let it set for at least 30 minutes, and then you're going to repeat that for 2 times over the next 2 hours. And that will begin the development not only of the glutens, but allow that yeast to really become active in there. You do have the option of letting this go overnight in your refrigerator. I don't prefer that option. I've been involved in too many instances where that yeast gets really too happy in the it gets too happy inside your refrigerator, and it kind of works its way out of the container, and you open up your refrigerator and you've got dough and dough and dough. So I would prefer you on the counter, not in the refrigerator. Once you've done that, you've repeated that process a couple of times of doing the book fold. You're going to let it set for about 2 hours at room temperature. Remember, you want it to be in a little bit of a warmer spot. A spot that's about 90 degrees is an ideal temperature to allow that yeast to get really happy and ferment in there. Once that 2-hour period is done, you're going to take your dough out, put it onto your work surface, and then you're going to cut it into 290 gram pieces. You want to make sure those pieces are fairly even. If they're not, what's going to happen is your baguettes are all going to cook at different temperatures inside the oven. So, maybe 293, 287, yeah, but you want to shoot for 290. Anything off is going to affect your cooking times. And then you're going to go into the shaping process, and we're going to take a look at a quick video here that's going to help you understand the shaping process a little bit better. It's a lot more simplistic than what it actually sounds. So hang on just a second here while I cue this up. All right, ladies and gents. All right, ladies and gents, that's the basics right there. Now, let me tell you something from personal experience. I did every other way than the right way until I finally gave up and I decided that, hey, I'll follow the instructions and make the baguette in that fashion. The other ways don't work. And I can tell you that from practical experience. So this video is going to be posted onto your class page. It's also in the weekly slides as well, so you can refer back to that at any time. But that is such a simplistic method to follow. That French bread, I was kind of thinking, and I don't know about you, Chef Carlos, Chef Rich, but we used to flatten the dough out, and then we would put broccolini and different types of fresh goat cheeses, and then roll it up and make a roulade. And we would do that for hors d'oeuvres and all sorts of other things. And so the possibilities with French bread is just beyond your wildest dreams. So once you've got your baguettes shaped and you're ready to finish the proofing process, you're going to take a sheet pan. Do your best to get a flat sheet pan. A lot of those things get curved and bent over time. We run into that in a commercial kitchen quite a bit, but you're going to try to get a flat sheet pan with parchment paper or a silk mat on top of it. Then you're going to put the baguettes on there. You're going to allow them to double in size. Once they've doubled in size, you're going to take a chef's knife or a very sharp knife. In the commercial kitchen, they'll use X-Acto knives. It's very, very common. You're going to make a 1/4 inch incisions diagonally across the bread, which will allow that openness as it bakes. Then they're going to go into the oven, 450 degrees for right around 30 minutes or so. And boom, you're looking for a nice golden brown, delicious look to it. When you pick it up and you smell it, you want to make sure it doesn't smell like alcohol. That means all the yeast has been cooked out of it. You like to tap the bread. If it sounds very thick and dense, it's probably not done yet. You want to hear like that hollow sound to it, which is very, very important. And then another way that we tell if the bread is fully cooked, you're going to be starting off with right around 290 grams of dough. When it's fully cooked, that water should have evaporated, so your bread should weigh less. So your baguette should come in right around 215, 220 grams. Will kind of let you know that it's right on the money. Chef Carla, do you have anything to add to that?
I have pictures.
I love it. I love it. Let's see them.
So these pictures, I have to give credit to Chef Genevieve. Her and I used to work together, and she ended up doing the step-by-step. And so I'm going to show you guys part of your reading, you guys, for this week. And let me see if I can get to that really quickly. It's on your I'm sorry, it's in your reading this week. Let me take a look at the chapter. I'm sorry, I didn't have that ready. But I want to show you guys, there's 12 steps into making a yeasted dough. There's 12 steps that you have to follow. So let me go ahead and get to you guys there, right? And so the pictures are going to sort of show those steps. Let me see. Here they are. So this is on page 923, in part of your reading this week. There's 12 steps you got to follow, right? So scaling the ingredients, mixing. Chef, were you going to talk about this? I don't want to.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. So scaling the ingredients obviously is, the step-by-step, like measuring every single ingredient. The great thing about this week, you guys, is we only have a few ingredients to work with. Take a look at that, right? 4 ingredients, and you guys are going to make this amazing bread at the end. So I'm pretty excited about that. You're going to be mixing, or also known as kneading right there, right? You're going to do a bulk fermentation. There's that folding and punching that your recipe talks about, which is right here, that stretching of the dough and folding that Chef was talking about, to do like you can do it like in a little letter fold, or you can do a book fold. Like I think Chef mentioned a book fold right there. But the recipe says to stretch the dough in a rectangular form, fold it into thirds, and then, it helps to kind of develop glutens and kind of remove the yeast around. And of course, you're going to be dividing the doughs. I suggest for this recipe to divide it in 3 pieces equally by weight. You're going to round it. You're going to do the bench fermentation, which just means that you're leaving the dough on top of the kitchen counter. Put a little flour or maybe a little spray there. The pan spray is fine. And you put your 3 little portions nicely rounded. At that point, obviously, you ended up removing all the carbon dioxide that's inside, all the gas. And of course, you just shape them to get them ready for into a round ball, to get them ready into a baguette shape. But the dough is really tight at that point. Those glutens are tight, so you have to let them relax. And of course, the shaping part comes in next. Proofing is allowing the shaped product already rise. And then, of course, baking, cooling, and storing. But I do have these pictures that Chef ended up sharing with me. Let me see. Here they are. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the step-by-step right here. The only thing that she didn't do here is that stretching and folding process. So here's her mise en place. You guys can see beautiful photograph right there. This is just a simple mixing, right? Chef was talking about putting all the 4 ingredients together, mixing them up until they come together into a little ball. The next step is to place a little plastic wrap on top. And this is called a bulk fermentation. That's step number 3, right? The next step is to let the dough rise. And you see that it kind of, this is before rising. It hasn't given its full amount, right? The next step is to cover it up. Obviously, you're going to keep it like Chef was talking about, Chef Warren was saying, to place it somewhere warm. You know, hopefully your kitchen is just a little warm, that is going to start to expand. Yeast loves warm temperatures, and we're talking about, you know, between 70 to about 90 degrees or so. They love that temperature, so they're going to rise much faster. So here's the, has been sitting, maybe I would say a minimum, you guys, it's going to be roughly about an hour to let this dough kind of sit around. But look how beautiful. Look at all the yeast. I mean, the yeast ended up releasing a lot of carbon dioxide, right? So you see this beautiful expansion. Now, I always tell my students, don't go based on length of time. Go based on the size of the dough. And I always look for double in size, right? So if this was a little smaller, I'm going to take you, look at this, right? It's a lot smaller, and it almost took the entire bowl afterwards, right? So when it looks like it has double in size, that's a good indication that your dough has rested enough. At this point, you guys can start doing the stretching and folding and stretching and folding, right? That process. It will continue to develop flavor through fermentation. It's going to continue to create more yeast. Then obviously the next step is to do the folding, the stretching, and then you can start dividing the dough into 3 pieces, right? Make sure that you use the scale so every single baguette looks equal in length and thickness as well. I would be very upset to go to the market, you know, to buy my beautiful baguette, and one looks shorter than the other. You know, customers get really angry about that. Then the next step, oops, I'm going too fast, is to shape the baguette, and Chef already showed you a video on how to do that. I also posted a video as well, Chef Warren, for all the students to see how to shape the baguette. And obviously after shaping, you got to do what's called the proofing, right? And it's recommended to put a little plastic on top, but I do recommend also a quick little spray, like a pan spray, or just put a little bit of oil, like vegetable oil, on your fingers, and just kind of lightly dab the top of your baguette, then place the plastic. The plastic is going to prevent the skin from drying because it's exposing to the air, and also retaining more moisture inside and just warmth as well. When the dough has risen, right, and it became like double in size, then it's ready to do the slashes. And the slashes are very important. You know, you can do 3, 5. I know she did 4 odd numbers. I know when I went to culinary school, I was told to do odd numbers, like 3 and 5, because it's more appealing to the eye. But it's really important that you do a very slight angle. You see that? They're very at a slight angle right here. And then obviously you bake it off, nice golden brown color. And the last thing is to show us the crust. Right, so there's the step-by-step for you guys. And that's about it.
Thank you very much. That's awesome. I think that was great coverage right there. I love that. And then, ladies and gents, one thing that we forgot to mention, that when they do come out of the oven, the ideal thing to do is to put them onto a rack versus a flat surface. This allows them to evenly cool and allows the moisture to escape from all sides. So this is just a traditional rack right here that that you see quite a bit in industry, and it's highly recommended. Benjamin, what's up?
Okay, a couple things. I was looking at the recipe before you pulled it up. It says 10 grams. Do we convert that? Because when I did the cookies, it made them salty.
What convert what?
Convert the
the
grams.
salt?
Yes.
What kind of salt were you using when you made the cookies?
Regular table salt.
Yeah.
Kosher salt.
No, which one? Table or kosher?
It was kosher.
Okay, so yeah, we want to make sure we always use table salt, or not table salt, but we always want to make sure that we use kosher salt in the kitchen. Table salt has iodine. It sounds like you are using kosher salt, which is right on the money, but you want to make sure that your measurements are really, really accurate in that, because it sounds like something might have gone just a little awry right there.
Okay.
And also make sure that you're also accounting for your tare weight on your scale, which is an often mistake. Do you know how to set the tare weight on the scale?
Yeah. I had it all set to grams, and it still came out salty and tasted like it was salty. Tasted salty and bacon zody. And
Let's talk. Get a hold of me after class, and we can kind of we
Okay,
can
and
walk
then-
you through that one.
And then my other thing is, can we use a whisk to make this, or do we need to use a stand-up blender like we have?
For the dough,
Yes.
neither one of them.
Okay.
You don't. You can actually use a little plastic spatula if you don't want to get your hands dirty. So
Okay.
you're just going to take a bowl, preferably stainless steel bowl, because we don't use glass in the kitchen. But if all you have is glass, that's perfectly fine. Or even a large Tupperware dish. Just a nice rounded bowl is perfectly fine. You're going to put your 4 ingredients into the bowl, kind of mix them up real well. Your dough will still be shaggy. Don't worry about it. It's not going to be perfectly smooth. It only takes about 30 seconds to mix that dough, and then you're going to flip it out on your countertop. You're going to ball it up nicely, and then you're going to pull it out into a rectangle. Do your book folds. Boom. Do that twice. Let it rest for 30 minutes. You'll repeat that for a couple of times over the next couple of hours, and then let it proof.
All right. Thanks, Chef.
You're welcome. All right, ladies and gents, taking a look at a couple of things that we use in industry. So once you're in the kitchen, you know what you're looking for. Sheet pans. I'm telling you, you're going to see thousands of these things over time. Get used to the way they look. Half size sheet pan, quarter sheet pans, very common. Parchment paper. These are pans that we use in industry to cook baguettes. You actually lay the loaf in there, and you'll notice that they're all perforated, so it allows the air to circulate evenly and gets that nice browning on the bottom. If you go to the grocery store, to the market, or to the boulangerie, and you pick up a loaf of French bread, most likely you're going to notice those little perforation spots on the bottom, and that's what they're from. That dough hook is what you would use in industry if you were doing a large volume of this bread. But for this week, we are mixing by hand. And then convection ovens, very, very common. So those are some of the things that we primarily work with in industry. Taking a look at this week's assignment. Ladies and gents, make sure you stay on top of your sanitation. Once you're in industry, it's not just something we're harping on here at Escoffier. In industry, it is something that is dominated by the local authorities, and they come by frequently just to make sure that your sanitizer is proper and that everything is set. So something we take very seriously. Nice picture of your mise en place. Chef Rich brought up a great thing a couple of weeks ago. You want to have that mise en place ready to go to execute that assignment. So it saves you a lot of time and it'll make you work a lot more efficient. And then you want to have your dough. Ignore this part where it says mixed for 4 minutes fast, 4 minutes slow. It's just the mix in the bowl is what we're taking a look at. That's what Chef Rich needs to see. And then the dough during the fermentation process covered in the bowl. And then the dough after the fermentation process, very, very important. And then you also want to have your picture of your units that have been portioned out, a picture of the baguettes shaped, and then a picture of the baguettes after they proofed, and then a picture of the baguettes with either the 3 or the 5 slashes on there. Very important, about 1/4 inch deep, diagonally or bias cut across the top of the bread. And then the baked units, and then make sure that you show us a picture of the interior of the bread. We want to make sure that you got the proofing and the yeast fermentation, and you have those nice little pockets in there. I guarantee you this is a very addictive bread. Then don't say you're not a baker. You know what? You're just learning a new technique. It's very, very important. This could lead you to something that you don't know where you're going. So, all right, ladies and gents, any questions? Chef Rich, Chef Carla?
Well, I just wanted to say that, baking bread, you have to understand yeast really well, I think, to understand what is it that it makes, what is it that provides to the bread making. I always think about yeast, that it requires, a couple of things in order to be able to work properly. You have to provide yeast with food, right? The food in this case is, because they actually consume sugars, like, straight sugars, like granulated sugar. But for example, in this recipe doesn't have it, the starch is actually being provided through the flour. In their little systems, they're actually able to kind of consume the starch, and then they turn it into sugars for energy later on. So you need to provide some food, some moisture, right? We're adding water to this recipe, so there's moisture in there. You need definitely some warmth, right? So if you guys are working in a kitchen that's a little warm, we're talking about, even if you have it about 75 to 80 degrees, the yeast is going to start reacting, and it's going to start releasing carbon dioxide and eventually producing fermentation, which is eventually what we want. For us, fermentation is flavor, right? So as the dough is fermenting, it's developing that flavor that we want. And the last thing the yeast needs is oxygen. Just like us, you guys. I think the yeast is just like us. We want everything that the yeast wants as well. So once you understand the yeast, the way it works, I think it's just about being patient too, you guys. This is not considered a quick bread, right? We already did quick breads in the past where we used chemical leaveners. Now we're dealing with a whole different thing. Yeast is going to work, and it's going to start moving at its own pace. If you provide warmth, right, it's going to start working a little faster. But if you provide cold environment, it's going to work a lot slower. So you got to be patient when it comes to bread making. Just like Chef was saying, do not start the bread recipe, and even the following week, week 10, when we make the focaccia, don't start on a Tuesday, please, because you're going to be setting yourself to failure already. You're going to be stressing yourself. You're going to be trying to rush. I think it takes, Chef, you were right. It can take sometimes up to 6 hours. I mean, there's so much folding and stretching to do, and you have to wait for like 30 minutes in between. So there's a lot going on there. So I recommend to start early for this recipe. But one of the things that I wanted to mention is that when you guys start to roll your baguette, right, when you're ready to shape it, if you as you're rolling and you feel that the dough keeps shrinking back, that means the glutens are still too tight, right? The glutens are like muscle fibers, sort of. The more you work them, the tighter they get. But the more they sit around, the more relaxed they're going to get, and they're going to stretch now nicely even. So if you guys are rolling your dough and you feel that the baguette keeps shrinking, what I recommend is to put a quick little spray, put plastic back on top, and just let it relax for another 15 minutes or so. When you guys come back to that dough, you're going to notice that, and you start rolling, you're going to notice that it's just going to start stretching very quickly. So understanding those things, it's very important. And again, you definitely don't want to shorten your fermentation process, right? That proofing, the stretching and folding and letting it rest 30 minutes in between. You don't want to shorten that, because then you're also taking away some of that flavor that you're going to have at the end. I think this is a really great recipe. I actually did it as well in the past, and it's really flavorful. It's really nice, So I recommend to have plenty of time to do this. I recommend to start on Wednesday, you guys. Start on Wednesday with that dough, if you can finish it, that great. If not, I don't know about Thursday, especially if you're cooking, you might be overwhelmed with making bread for Thanksgiving, but it's definitely a great practice. Once you understand this type of dough, then you can start to add a little more of like butters and flavors like olives and garlic and things like that, to expand that knowledge. But definitely for this week, I would recommend just to stick to that recipe, make it like a plain baguette, just like what we're doing, so you can get to experience the process of making a yeasted dough. That's it, Chef. But it should be fun, you guys. You guys are going to be loving the final process. of having 4 ingredients and at the end having an amazing bread.
Well said. I always thinking about working with yeast as dealing with a small baby, right? You want to keep it warm and give it plenty to eat, right? You don't want to get it too hot or too cold. So that's always been my association there. Great live session this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Chef Carla. Thank you, Chef Rich. If anybody has any questions, please remember that the 3 of us are here for your success. Reach out, let us know what we can do to help you. We look forward to some early submissions next week. And most importantly, everybody, take a moment this week, breathe, and enjoy some time with your family. We wish all of you a very happy Thanksgiving. I look forward to seeing you next week, everybody. Take care.
Happy Thanksgiving.